Nelson Mandela said, "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, because love comes more naturally to the human heart than the opposite." Good morning and welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Joyce Thompson, one of the worship associates, and we're very glad you're here today. Whether you are a longtime member or you're here for the very first time, we hope that you will find community and inspiration with us. Pastor Kris Cervantes will be doing the service today, and the title is "It's a Hard Life: Rescuing Our Children and Ourselves from Hate. Unitarian Universalists can heal hate at its roots." Let's learn how our UU principles can help us with this very important mission.
Each day provides us with an opportunity to love again, to hurt again, to embrace joy, to experience unease, to discover the tragic. Each day provides us with the opportunity to live. This day is no different. This hour is no more unique than the last, except maybe today, maybe now, among friends and fellow journeyers, maybe for the first time, maybe silently, we can share ourselves. Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Pastor Kris Cervantes. Let us worship together and share ourselves as we can during this sacred time together. Welcome.
In a world filled with the darkness of ignorance, let us shine the light of reason. In a world filled with the darkness of despair, may we bring the light of hope. In a world filled with the darkness of hate, let us shine the light of love. The members of our church hold a variety of spiritual beliefs. We do not expect or require anyone to adhere to a particular creed. Instead, we encourage the free exploration of truth and wisdom. At the same time, we are bound together by a covenant, by a promise, and we recite the covenant every week to remind ourselves of the importance of our community. Please join me in saying, "Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant: to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another."
Join in, help me out. Goes out to all our little folks. I am a backseat driver from America. They drive to the left on Falls Road, and the man at the wheel's name is Seamus. We pass a child on the corner he knows, and Seamus says, "No, what chance is that kid got?" I say from the back, "I don't know." He says, "There's barbed wire at all of these exits, and there ain't no place in Belfast for that child to go. 'Cause it's a hard life, it's a hard life, it's a very hard life. It's a hard life wherever you go. And if we poison our children with hatred, then a hard life is all that they'll know. And there ain't no place in Belfast for that child to go." The cafeteria line in Chicago, the fat man in front of me is calling black people trash to his children, when he's the only trash here I see. And I'm thinking this man wears a white hood in the night when his children should sleep. But they'll slip to their window and they'll see him, and they'll think that white hood's all they need. Let me hear you now. 'Cause it's a hard life, it's a hard life, it's a very hard life. It's a hard life wherever you go. And if we poison our children with hatred, then a hard life is all that they'll know. And there ain't no place in Chicago for those kids to go. Child in the 60s, when dreams could be held through TV, and we had Disney and Cronkite and Martin Luther, and I believe now I am the backseat driver from America. I am not at control of the wheel, and I am guilty, I am war, and I have been the root of all evil, Lord, and I can't drive on the left side of the road. 'Cause it's a hard life, it's a hard life, it's a very hard life. It's a hard life wherever you go. And if we poison our children with hatred, then a hard life is all that they'll know. And there'll be no place in this world for our kids to go. 'Cause we've made it a hard life wherever they go.
Shelter us when the cold winds of indifference, divisiveness, and narrow self-interest howl in the night, chilling our hearts and rattling the windows of our souls. Help us find new hope, to remember that the struggle is a movement, not a moment, when we wonder whether we'll ever reach the promised land of beloved community. Grant us the strength and courage to stand up and speak out against discrimination and oppression. Grant us, too, wisdom and humility, but that we might speak our truth in love remembering that hatred and bitterness can never cure the disease of fear. May it be so. I'd like to share a reading with you now. It's a little bit long, but I really liked it and it inspired me, and I hope you'll find it inspiring as well. It's written by Jeffrey A. Lockwood, who is, of all things, an insect ecologist, and he's a professor at the University of Wyoming in Laramie. And in it, he references a class that he teaches. So here goes. There is no such thing as lasting peace, a tranquility that will persist forever, a final resting place for the lion and the lamb. We yearn for completion of our task, the fulfillment of our striving, the consummation of our journey. And this longing sows seeds of our defeat. We aspire to solve conflicts. We ache to be done with the hard work of life. We pine for a day in which everlasting peace prevails. In believing that the purpose of a peace movement lies in securing an outcome, in reaching an amicable conclusion, in attaining a serene world, we assure our own frustration, our own futility, and ultimately our own failure. The work of peacemaking will never be done. That is the curse and the blessing of being human. It's a curse in that there's no utopian culmination of our labors. A blessing that we will always have meaningful work. The peacemaker is like Sisyphus, whom the gods condemned to an eternal life of shoving a boulder up a hill, only to see it roll back down again in an endless cycle of apparent futility. How could Sisyphus endure such a fate? I've asked my students, and their answers were revealing, Mr. Lockwood says. Some students suppose that there is always hope, a hope that the gods will relent, that peace will finally come to Sisyphus and perhaps to us. A particularly creative student suggested that over time, the rolling of the boulder would erode the hill so that eventually the labor of Sisyphus would be complete. Maybe as we roll the boulder of peace in every generation, the hill of hate is worn down. But I believe the most compelling answer came from those students who understood that a sense of futility comes from the belief that we rightfully expect to see the fruit of our labors. We forget that virtue lies in the doing of good works, not in the completing of our tasks. Maybe Sisyphus will never recover the grace of the gods. Maybe the hill will never be worn down. But if he and we can authentically and deeply engage in our labors, if we roll the boulder of peace because it is what we are called to do, if the measure of our work is its capacity to shape who we are, we can go on pushing. And if in the course of our labors, the hill of hate is eroded, that will be a beautiful thing, a very beautiful thing. But as much as we hope that peacemaking will replace warmongering, as much as we hope to live at a critical point of human history, as much as we dream of a glorious conversion of society, we must understand that while epiphanies may change souls, they rarely change the world. To know what we can do to understand what the world needs of us, we must look into the eyes of the frightened soldier and the terrified child. But to sustain our work, we must look inside ourselves. There we shall find the understanding that the endless labor of life is not about changing the world, but about creating ourselves. We cannot make the world peaceful, but neither can the world make us hopeless.
I had postpartum depression after the birth of my first son, Jack. I'd had an unexpected cesarean section. And after his birth, I both loved him desperately and also felt curiously detached from him. My sister Kim came and stayed with us for 2 weeks because I couldn't drive and my husband had to go back to work. We were 26 years old. Kim ferried Jack and me around town as I cried, cleaned my house as I struggled with breastfeeding and cried, made us both go outside to walk every day while I cried. One day she was driving me back from a doctor's appointment and I was crying about my inadequacy. I poured out my anguish that I wasn't as attached to Jack as I wanted to be, and my fears that I couldn't or didn't or wouldn't love him enough. And my wise sister said, Kristen, which is what I get called when I'm in trouble, Kristen, you wouldn't be this upset if you didn't love him. You wouldn't care. I thought about it, and as I was doing that, she said, as bad as you feel now, as deep in the pit as you feel now, that's how deep your love is. She said it was like it was the most obvious thing in the world, but I so needed to hear it. It was a really powerful moment. And that's probably when I began to heal. I also went to therapy and things got better. I had another kid, but going back to little Jack there, I began to grow into my own parenting style. And 22 years ago, they called it attachment parenting. Maybe they still do. I carried my son as much as possible. I had a sling and I resisted all the attempts to sleep train him by letting him cry it out. As she watched me scoop my child up almost every time he lifted his hands up to me, one of Jack's grandparents said, he'll never walk if you never leave him down there. And I settled him on my hip and said, he'll walk when he's ready. And he did when he was ready. And then I would often let him set the pace and let him make mistakes. Scraped elbows from tumbles off curbs, bruised knees from climbing small trees, the occasional swipe of a claw from an outraged cat. I would rush to comfort him and was told by several people, you're spoiling him. No. By always comforting my children, even or especially when their pain was self-inflicted, I taught them that I would be a safe place for their tears and their pain. I agreed with them, falling down hurts. I comforted them, and then we would agree together that maybe that tree isn't ready to be climbed, or maybe we don't play with the kitty that way because the kitty doesn't like it. I believed then and I believe now that all children need an adult at home, be they sibling, parent, guardian, grandparent, or otherwise, who is their safe harbor. I believe that the world is full enough of pain that there's no need for those of us who love and nurture the younger generations to toughen them up ahead of time. Let them have safe and loving homes as refuge. The world will wound and scar and batter them. Have no fear. We are called to do otherwise. And as for spoiling children by expressing love, comfort, and affection, well, you can't spoil a baby. If a baby is crying, they need something. And really the same thing is true of adults and kids. The tricky thing with grown-ups, and one of the ways we grown folks really mess up our kids, is that we oh so lovingly try to stop their crying and our own with things we want instead of discerning the actual unmet need. So good news, though, there are a few simple questions that I remember that can help get to the bottom of things. These are questions for babies and grown-ups. Are you too hot or too cold? Are you hungry? Are you dirty or in physical or mental pain? Are you lonely? P.S. Bored is a subset of lonely. I don't think we get to wiggle out of this one, grown-ups. But I digress. All that I've said here makes me out to be an amazing mother, strong and secure and healthy and enlightened. And I was all those things to some degree. And I was also not the greatest mom at plenty of times. I was irritable and short. And there were plenty of moments when I questioned myself and my parenting and my mothering and my womanhood, because God, this parenting thing, this raising children thing, it's hard. And also, children are sometimes just little pains in the butt. And I know that because I once was one. So I try to keep that in mind too when I think about my parenting and other people's parenting. Recently, the texts and the social media posts of several murderers have been in the media. 2 of the murderers are father and son. The father, it turns out, is more tech savvy because law enforcement has been unable to break the encryption on his phone. I kind of wonder what he was using. It might be good for pastoral counseling. The son and his friend, the one who assisted in and filmed the murder of an unarmed Black man in the neighborhood, well, they weren't so careful, and their phones and social media accounts provided enough evidence for more than 2 hours of testimony in the 3 men's hate crimes trial. I have before me a long list of the horrible text messages and comments and posts and videos that they shared in court, but I'm not going to read them here because all the words are ugly and I do not want to lift up these men's hateful rhetoric. I will say that it's as bad as you think, and if you want to find out what they say, there are plenty of news stories you can read. I will also say that since the elder of the trio of men was more reticent on social media, the prosecution provided witnesses who claimed to have experienced his racism up close and personal. And I'm just going to share one of those stories. A white real estate agent and her daughter, who had been in town for a legal matter, were being driven to the airport by the older man, who was then an investigator tasked with that job by the local DA. The real estate agent mentioned she had just heard a prominent civil rights activist from Georgia had died and said she felt terrible. She said their driver replied, "I wish that guy had been in the ground years ago. All those Blacks are nothing but trouble, and I wish they'd all die." She said he continued to rant for a couple of minutes while she sat silent and stunned. "I didn't say a word," she testified. "I was a little afraid. I've never heard anybody speak that way before or since." The problem is, though, people do speak that way, and we know that. But racism itself isn't natural. As Nelson Mandela put it in Long Walk to Freedom, and as our wonderful worship associate shared with us, no one is born hating another person because of the color of their skin or their background or their religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Now, tribalism is natural. We are biological creatures born in and of an ecosystem which employs violence in the competition for sometimes scarce resources. Nature is red in tooth and claw, as Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote, inevitable and irresistible. Thou makest thine appeal to me. I bring to life, I bring to death. The spirit does but mean the breath. Nature is not concerned with the extinction of the individual or even the species as long as the breath doth go on and life continues. But Nelson Mandela is right too, and one of nature's gifts, perhaps the balancing compensation amidst the endless cycles of life and death, is that of love. Whether it's seated in the heart or in our pheromonal secretions, probably both, the longing for companionship and acceptance we humans have is so strong that we will seek it out even down the most destructive paths. Our longing to give and receive love is stronger than our fear of death itself. If the opposite of love is indifference, as my sister Kim and many other wise people have informed us, what is hate? Well, a bunch of things, it turns out, just like love. Hate, like love, has its own signature chemical and emotional cocktail. Both states excite our systems related to adrenaline, readiness, and action, or even aggression. But love deactivates our brain's judgment centers, whereas hate triggers the parts of the brain dealing with evaluation and watchfulness, judginess. Now, almost hate comes down to what psychologists call in-group and out-group understandings and behaviors. In-groups are my people who keep me safe, and so I keep them safe, and thus we all thrive together. People in the in-group receive my love, and I judge them less harshly than I would if they weren't part of my in-group. Out-groups are those others. Who knows if they even are people? I don't love them, and I judge them because I believe, I know, shouts the medulla oblongata, they are dangerous. And I know they're dangerous because they're not part of my in-group. See how that works? Yeah. But why do we hate? Well, again, lots of reasons. That original biological cause of hate as necessary to survival does not make rational sense in most of American life, particularly when the hate we're speaking of is white supremacy, hatred inflicted upon the marginalized by those in the centers of power. White men and women still hold the highest positions in the vast majority of our society. White families experience less poverty, environmental harm, and neighborhood violence than Black families in America. And white folks also have access to better rated schools, higher education, healthcare, jobs, and real estate than their Black counterparts. White supremacy complains about immigrants stealing American jobs, while American crops rot in the fields because white people won't work for the crappy pay and treatment that we mete out to our immigrant workers. White supremacy abandons urban neighborhoods to crumbling infrastructure, underfunded and served schools, food deserts, and poisonous water supplies, and then tells us minorities are fat, dirty, and lazy when they keep getting sick and dying from it. So, why do some white people hate all Black people so much? It seems that if the human environment won't provide opportunities to hate, we might well seek it out. At least some of us will. There are two other reasons that we hate, two other reasons besides survival that particularly stood out to me. The first is boredom or loneliness. Hatred as a community builder. Let's all get together and hate the same people. And I don't know about you, but I've seen some video of rallies, political rallies, that made me feel like that was probably a pretty strong bond. The other reason we hate is that we see in others what we fear in ourselves. And we've all heard at least 5 too many news stories about that one individual, the person who rails the hardest against celebrating queerness, who is then caught being as gay as a tree full of monkeys on nitrous oxide, to borrow a phrase from Terry Pratchett. I also know that my own less desirable qualities, like bossiness and impatience and judginess, are the things that drive me crazy in other people. Theologian, exegete thyself. And I will finally add, there's no one we hate more than the person we have harmed. Preemptive hate will keep you warm at night, and it also means you never have to face up to your own sins and attempt to right your wrongs. The weight of sin accumulated by the adherents of white supremacy will kill those who carry it, and it'll kill those who come across it. But to set it down would be to see oneself in the mirror clearly. And apparently that thought is more frightening than death. My own awareness of my white privilege makes it hard to look in the mirror some days. So I imagine the prospect is soul shrinking to those who have denied their culpability while acting in violent and hateful ways for so long. But it's worth that clear look. Our white souls would be better served by it. And more importantly, our Black, Latina, Indigenous, and other neighbors who are targeted because of skin color would be physically and emotionally safer, healthier, and more joyful. I'm not sure that hate can be removed from the human species, mostly because it is so hardwired into our survival behaviors. But I am sure that we must continue to try and remove it, or at least mitigate it, and teach ourselves when and where the instinct for survival is helpful and where it must be redirected. In our Words to Ponder, Dr. Jeffrey Lockwood wrote, "Maybe Sisyphus will never recover the graces of the gods, and maybe the hill will never be worn down. But if we can authentically and deeply engage in our labors, if we roll the boulder of peace because it is what we are called to do, if the measure of our work is its capacity to shape who we are, we can go on pushing. And in the course of our labors, if the hill of hate is eroded, that will be a very beautiful thing. But as much as we hope that peacemaking will replace warmongering, as much as we dream of a glorious conversion of society, we must understand that while epiphanies may change souls, they rarely change the world. To know what we can do, to understand what the world needs of us, we must look into the eyes of the other. But to sustain our work, we must look inside ourselves. There we shall find the understanding that the endless labor of life is not about changing the world. I will add, not entirely about that, but about creating ourselves. We can't make the world peaceful, but neither can the world make us hopeless. That's a powerful sentence. It's a hard life, my friends. It's a very hard life. I don't know anything at all about those 3 murderers that I spoke about, except as it concerns their evil actions and their proud membership in that great American club called white supremacy. I do wonder if those men had parents or someone who loved them and held them tight when they were frightened children. I wonder if there was a time when they had the secure inner knowledge of being loved no matter what, of being safe physically and emotionally. I hope they did, but I wonder. Almost all of us learn our hatreds at home. And there is ample evidence that in the case of this father and son, the insidious hatred of racism was handed down. And I'm sorry, but a racist home is not a healthy home, and racism is not a family value that will lead to a happy childhood or adulthood. And I also wonder if the Black man who they lynched had a loving guardian like that. I see his parents on the news, and if the depth of our pain matches the depth of our love, they loved him deeply. But many people who have terrible childhoods grow up to be wonderful adults. And even those who don't, very few end up lynching a grown man in broad daylight and filming it. But wouldn't it be better if all children did have someone, more than one someone who loved them for who they are? Someone who would let them ask questions about everything from God to sexuality to bugs to books? Someone who will be their harbor, the safe place from which they can venture out and always know welcome upon return? Lockwood writes that while epiphanies may change souls, they rarely change the world. On the macro scale, we have to continue supporting families and communities by voting for family leave, universal health care, fully funded, best practice-based education, and a plethora of other issues that most of us UUs are very aware of. If you're not, let's talk. But on the micro scale, perhaps this reflection can be an epiphany or a reminder or a call that transforms our own lives. Rescuing our children from hate means treating our children with respect and consideration for their minds and bodies, not touching them without enthusiastic consent, validating their feelings, taking them seriously, and also providing a healthy, affirming environment where they can fully be themselves. Rescuing our children from hate also means rescuing ourselves, continuing to engage in anti-racist practices, in self-reflection, and in self-education. Rescuing our children from hate means rescuing ourselves from the need to pass our old hurts and hatreds to the next generation. From the need to feel justified, from the need to control others. We probably can't rescue our children from all the hatreds out there in the world, but what we can do as individuals and in this community is teach them and ourselves compassion, help us all learn self-awareness, and give ourselves and our children the sure and certain knowledge that we and they are loved and loving and worthy. Amen, and may it be so.
I sing this song not to you, but for you, because I know this is the truth of who we all are. Take these words in. I am light, I am light. 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 I am not the things my family did. I am not the voices in my head. I am not the pieces of the brokenness inside. I am light. I'm not the mistakes that I have made, or any of the things that cause me pain. I am not the pieces of the dreams I left behind. I am light. I am light. I am not the color of my eyes. I am not the skin on the outside. I am not my age. I am not my race. My soul inside is all light. Thank you. All light, yeah. I am divinity defined. I am the God on the inside. I am a star, a piece of it all. I am light.
This religious community exists by its mission as a fire exists by burning. But a fire cannot burn without fuel. And it is the time, the energy, the imagination, the vision, the creativity, the compassion, the hope, the love, and the financial support of the members and friends of this community that fuels our mission to nurture and sustain a welcoming, inclusive, and diverse liberal religious community, and that transforms lives and serves the world. Your support The free and generous support of each and every one of you, member and friend of this community, is what fuels this community and its mission. And without your support, the flame of justice, the community, and love cannot burn brightly to warm ourselves and be a beacon in a world threatened by division and fear. We thank you for honoring your pledges to this church and for your donations. You can donate now by going to our website, www.communityuchurch.org, and clicking on the blue Donate Now button, or you can get the actual address and mail a check. We deeply appreciate your generosity. As our service comes to a close, it's time for us to extinguish the chalice. Please unmute yourselves and join me in saying together, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We are all called by the wind, the rushing water, the fireflies, the summer sun, called by the sidewalk, the playground, the laughing children, the streetlights, called by our appetites and gifts, our needs and challenges, called by the bottle, the needle, the powder, the pill, the game, the bet, the need, the want, the pain, the cure, the love, the hope, the dream. Called by the spirit of love and hope and visions of love's purpose for our lives. We are called. What do we choose? How do we answer? Go in peace and heed the call, however it may come to you.